On this edition of North Bay Bountiful, we explore what's in our food. Although we live in a time when information from across the globe and across centuries is instantly available to us, it can still be remarkably difficult to find out what is in the food we eat and what energy and natural resources go into producing it.
North Bay Bountiful is made possible in part by Rocky, the free-range chicken, and Rosie, the original organic chicken. The Sonoma County Agricultural Preservation and Open Space District, Made Local Magazine, and Sonoma County Go Local. Support also provided by Pepperwood Preserve and through the generous support of the Sonoma County Water Agency. Cultivate, celebrate, connect.
The Great American Family Farm. This is the picture most of us have when we think about where our food comes from. However, the reality can be much different. Factory farming, genetically modified organisms, and chemical pesticides have become a large part of American agriculture. It's important to not lose sight of our connection with the food we eat.
Children who have grown up in cities that don't even understand that fruit grows on trees and that plants are actually a source of food are now being shown and touching plants and touching the soil. And so it's a way to bring all of us and to kind of humanize us. We all can relate. We all love the smell of fresh tomatoes and fresh fruit compared to those that we buy. So we all can understand it because it's our food source. It's very near and dear to us.
Green String Farm in Petaluma aims to provide sustainably grown food for the local community, while teaching future farmers the skills and knowledge to feed their own communities and take care of the environment.
Do you want to spend hundreds of thousands of calories of energy flying grapes in here from Chile when we can grow our own table grapes? Do you want them produced in a fashion bearing toxicities and pumped up with commercial nitrogenous substances so that they're a typical table grape, but kind of looks like a water balloon and tastes like a water balloon to me, where a grape is supposed to be a delightful, sweet, and nourishing substance? Local producers don't need that huge transportational infusion of energy.
Welcome to Green String Farm. It's here in the Petaluma countryside where sustainable farming meets education. Bob Kennard, administrator of Green String Farm and Institute, grows nutritious food for the community and provides internships for aspiring farmers.
Farm to feed people, local people. We try to price everything as inexpensively as possible so that we don't exclude any members of our local community from purchasing naturally grown foodstuffs. That's the purpose of the farm. Purpose of the Institute is to educate other local producers so they can go out across the nation and we can transform this society into a self-sustaining, naturally caring, growing soil while we grow and feed people kind of environment.
Interns live on the property, where they gather for lectures about a variety of sustainable farming practices. Bob explains the most important things he wants his interns to learn. Confidence.
I have 120 lectures that I try to squeeze in 90 days, and in that period of time, there are the physical activities of learning how to become an agricultural athlete by working here at Green String Farm in the mornings, and I'd like them to be confident that they can go off and become a local food producer.
A practice that Green String Farm implements, and that Bob teaches to his interns, is growing food without the use of pesticides, weed killers, or any synthetic substances, resulting in a harmonious relationship with bugs and weeds. Just how does Green String grow its crops so successfully without these products?
All organisms have complete immunological systems, and if they're properly nourished, they're allowed to form and function those immunological systems. Bugs are indicators of plant health. They are not pests, as we call them. You got bugs on your plant. A sick plant, so it has bugs. If it were a healthy plant in the first place, it wouldn't have bugs. You cannot grow nature and have an adversarial relationship within that structure of nature.
In other words, when a plant has all the nutrients it needs, it can fend off insects and diseases on its own, eliminating the need for any synthetic additives.
What are we going to do to clean that soil up? Come on.
Activate soil activity.
Activate soil activity. What kind of activity?
All sorts. You want diversity, you want bacteria.
Ah, soil life. You're absolutely right. How do we stimulate soil life? Yeah, we're going to do what kind of compost? Sheet compost. That's right. We're going to develop a sheet compost, and we're going to inoculate that compost. And that biology, the yeasts, the molds, the funguses, the bacterias, the macropods are going to eat up and neutralize the vast majority of the toxicity very quickly, as well as stimulate the very positive and essential aerobic soil biology that has to be present in order to grow full, healthy plants.
When we are disconnected from nature, we are disconnected from our food. But local farmers who are growing with nature and minimizing human interference are reestablishing those connections. If we know our farmers, and we know how they grow their crops, then we know what's in our food.
It's my contention that if we could, as an organism, learn how to interface with nature appropriately and grow nature while we take care of and grow ourselves, in 3 generations, perhaps our children's children's children would start thinking and looking and acting and being what humanity has the capacity to be, which is, I'll say, entirely different than the small, selfish, self-centered, self-serving organism that we are today.
California growers have been experimenting with how to take small-scale organic practices and grow those to large farm operations. Many large farms have come to rely on chemical fertilizers and pesticides despite known health hazards.
One of the biggest and most worrisome problems with our current food system is its reliance on chemical pesticides. Of course, we've known that this is a problem for decades. One of the great environmental books of all time, Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, was focused on this. And, you know, we've banned some pesticides and herbicides and so on. But unfortunately, the conventional agriculture lobby has so far defended these chemicals from regulation.
The University of California Berkeley School of Public Health has been conducting a 2-decade study about the effect of pesticide use on agricultural workers, their children, and grandchildren.
When I signed up for a 6-month appointment at the Berkeley Food Institute, I definitely wanted to squeeze in some field trips. And I wasn't disappointed. Where are we? I mean, I know we're in Oakland, but where are we in Oakland?
West Oakland.
West Oakland.
Good spotting, Mark. You have the makings of a pollinator biologist.
You want to throw me the net? There's so much going on in California agriculture, public health, and policy. And since I pretty much had the entire University of California system at my fingertips, I zigzagged around the state to interview experts about these topics. On one day, I was on the streets of Los Angeles meeting with food labor activists. The next, I hung out with a historian of Chinese American cuisine. Then there was a tour of sustainable farmland in Santa Cruz. There was even a scenic boat ride where I learned about the health of the marine ecosystem. And then, of course, there was food. I cooked an all-organic, hyper-local meal with apprentice farmers. I ate the freshest possible seafood. I hit an authentic Taiwanese cafe. And I joined 8th graders for a fabulous school lunch. I don't remember the last time I had chocolate milk. Might have been 20 years ago. I ate a bunch of weeds also. Some were more edible than others.
I don't know what I did with my little collection of toxic plants, but
Hopefully we didn't eat them.
no, we didn't eat them, and we didn't eat enough.
Between my teaching gig, weekly columns, and a book tour, there just wasn't enough time to cover everything. Because I'm staying on another year as a lecturer at UC Berkeley's Graduate School of Journalism. And while the "you can take the boy out of New York" jokes will probably continue, I feel at home out here. So I'm looking forward to the new academic year, learning more about UC food system research and, of course, cooking with the best ingredients around. And come wintertime, when that Meyer lemon tree of mine bears fruit again, there may be one recipe I can share using these Bay Area favorites. We'll see. When I came out west earlier this year, there were a handful of topics I wanted to check out in more depth. Big-time agriculture was among them. I mean, if you want to see and learn about mass production of fruits and vegetables, there really is no place like California. For most crops other than corn and soybeans, this is really the belly of the beast, a place where monoculture often reigns and the use of chemicals is often rampant. I met epidemiologist Brenda Eskenazi of the University of California, Berkeley School of Public Health. She's an expert on the hazards of chemical exposures, and for nearly 16 years, she's been measuring the effects of pesticides and other environmental chemicals on pregnant women and their children in the Salinas Valley. It's called the Chamacos study. Chamacos is Mexican slang for kids, but in this case it also stands for the Center for Health Assessment of Mothers and Children of Salinas.
So in 1998, we got funded by the US EPA and the NIH to look at the effects of environmental chemicals on children's health. California is the leading agricultural state in the nation. So knew it had to be something about pesticides and agricultural chemicals.
Well, and what have you found out?
We enrolled 600 women delivering at the county hospital, receiving prenatal care at a series of different community clinics serving mostly farm workers. Initially, we were interested in organophosphate pesticides because they were the most commonly used pesticides. We've looked at the relationship of those organophosphate and showed associations with neurodevelopment, lowered IQ, which of course is everyone's concerned about, the child's IQ.
You don't want that.
You don't want that. And it was across the board. In terms of environmental chemicals, the most striking findings are probably the relationship of flame retardants with neurodevelopment, fertility.
So you're not only looking at farm chemicals.
Not only looking at farm chemicals. We've collected about 150,000 biological samples and measured many different things in those samples. It's so expensive to get studies going like this, and it's highly unusual to follow a cohort for this many years. So across the world, we are being looked at as a model for how to do this kind of study.
Is there a time in these kids' lives where exposures seem more denigrative than in other times?
So for the organophosphates, it was almost only prenatal if you're looking at neurodevelopment. If you're looking at respiratory symptoms, it was prenatal and postnatal. My concern is mostly the prenatal period. The problem is that half of pregnancies are not planned, and the period of sensitivity is probably throughout the pregnancy.
There's obviously some benefit, arguably, in using pesticides on crops, but we're talking about direct damage here. So how serious a problem is this exposure among farm workers?
I have concerns about exposures to pregnant women. I do feel that we should somehow control the amount of exposure that they have. The question that usually people ask is, do I eat organic?
I was going to get to that, but go ahead.
And the answer to that question is not exclusively, but as much as possible. But I also recognize that organic is more expensive, and to me it's so much more important that pregnant women and children eat fruits and vegetables.
So do you say eat fruits and vegetables, wash them carefully before you eat them?
It's exactly what I say.
Now that many of the kids in the study are in their teens, they're getting involved in projects to lessen chemical exposures in their communities. And while there's still plenty of data to be collected and shared with other researchers, for Brenda and her colleagues, this study has become so much more than statistics. It's about nurturing the human lives that they've touched.
You're one of my children, you see. You got many mothers.
Some practices go beyond spraying and application. They actually change the nature of the food itself. Genetically modified organisms and sub-therapeutic antibiotics go unreported in most food labeling.
Maybe one of the biggest success stories is in food. The U.S. Department of Agriculture tells us that local food systems are the biggest trend in agriculture today. farmers markets have expanded from about 5,000 10 years ago to over 8,000 today. People want to know who's growing their food. They want to know how it's grown. They want to know what's in it. Families, households, communities are seeing that this isn't the way to go, and they're demanding more organic food, more locally grown food, and they love going to the farmer's market and getting to know the people who are producing it and asking them questions about how they're doing it.
The Lexicon of Sustainability has created an educational series that explains our food system and its terminology. In this segment, we explore genetically modified organisms and sub-therapeutic antibiotics.
GMOs are genetically modified organisms. They're created when scientists take DNA from one plant species and add it to the DNA of another. In the US, the FDA has approved some of these genetically engineered crops for use, which means you're probably already eating or wearing GMOs, and you don't even know it. Other parts of the world require labeling for most GMO foods. But in the US, food companies don't have to tell you whether they're using GMOs at all. This alarms some consumers and food producers, and they've started a non-GMO movement. As Jessica Lundberg of Lundberg Family Farm states,
we feel that the consumer has the right to know if they're consuming genetically modified food.
But it doesn't end with labeling. They want to separate fact from fiction. Consumers are told some GMO crops can produce biofortified foods with higher nutritional value. But no such GMO products exist on the market. Consumers are also told that GMO crops produce greater yields and cost less for the farmer to grow. But even these claims are widely disputed. One thing is clear. Wherever GMO crops are planted, there's the risk of genetic drift. Genetic material from GMO crops can be carried on the wind and unintentionally transferred to non-GMO crops. And over 70% of GMO crops are engineered to resist powerful herbicides. The unexpected result? Growers use 25% more fertilizers and pesticides, not less. These contaminate our groundwater, enter our rivers, and pollute our oceans. So are GMOs safe? Many scientists in the US ask the same question. But since GMOs are patented and owned by private companies, it's difficult to conduct accurate tests. So we just don't know. GMOs. They're genetically modified organisms, and they're in what you eat and what you wear. Nearly 80% of the antibiotics in this country aren't used on people. They're used on animals. Animals we eat. And most of these animals aren't even sick. When an animal is sick, it's given therapeutic antibiotics, which Bill and Nicolette Nyman, California ranchers with 4 decades experience raising cattle, define as
a specific dose used for a limited period of time in an amount calculated for an individual animal or to cure an individual disease.
It's like when you go to the doctor and he gives you antibiotics. You take them for a short period of time, and then you stop. In industrial agriculture, animals are kept in closely confined conditions and given sub-therapeutic antibiotics as a preventative measure. Bill and Nicolette Nyman define this as
a low-level dosage used for extended periods of time on otherwise healthy cattle, mainly to increase their daily weight gain.
That's right. When animals are given antibiotics, even when they don't need them, they gain weight. And since a fat pig is worth more than a skinny one, using antibiotics, even if an animal isn't sick, actually increases a farmer's profits. Except there's a problem. The misuse of antibiotics encourages the evolution of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Bacteria that could be harmful to people, which is not good. Plus, animals fed antibiotics create animal waste, full of those very same antibiotics. These can contaminate our drinking water and ravage our ecosystems, and may eventually work their way back to people. People like you. Antibiotic-free. Do you know what's in the meat you eat? To learn more about terms like antibiotic-free, visit lexiconoffood.com, where your words can change the world.
Now more than ever, we need to examine the use of water and energy in the production of our food. In California, farms are in the forefront of examining their water use.
So the idea of catching rainwater, to me, especially in this climate, is kind of a no-brainer. We have, people talk about the drought of the last 4 or 5 years, although that hopefully seems to be lifting with last year and this year. One thing that people don't really think about is that we have a drought on an annual basis. So when water is plentiful, most of the time what you hear is people are worried about flooding. But then in the summer, when there hasn't been any rain for several months, people are worried that we're going to have enough water to get us through the summer. So the idea with rainwater catchment, because we have this kind of dramatic contrast between our wet and dry seasons, is that if you have a place that you can capture and store some of the water that's so plentiful in the winter, it's going to do you a lot of good when you're worried about water scarcity during the summer.
EcoFarm is a nonprofit association of farmers that examines best practices, including the use of water on the farm. From berry farms to livestock operations, farmers are learning how to divert, capture, and allocate water through landscape planning and technology.
My name is Frank Estrada. I've been around ag my whole life. I have a great passion for it and love farming and have a great time doing it. The name of our farm is Ryder Berry Farms. We do all types of berries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, and blueberries for Driscoll's. I've been with Ryder farming actively about 10 years here. We've been growing organic for about 15 years or so.
We are Marquis Guard family grass-fed, and we're here in San Gregorio, California, and we raise grass-fed beef, grass-fed lamb, pastured pork, and pasture-raised hens for eggs. We are certified with the American Grass-Fed Association, and we're also animal welfare approved.
Soil tension measures how hard a plant has to work to pull the water molecule away from the soil particle. We have our soil tension probes in the field, and they send their information to a central base station. We send that through cell phone networks to the internet. Anything that's web enabled, that information can be accessed in real time.
This large blue band, this is the simplicity of the system. This represents our optimum growing conditions for the particular crop. So as long as we keep our tension in between the top and the bottom thresholds, the plant is growing in the optimum conditions, the maximum water use efficiency is being obtained.
Once everything is online, it's as easy as maybe having your laptop, logging onto the network and checking your probes.
So when I came here in 1987, one of the first things I noticed was that the ranch had a lot of surface water. Just thought it would make a lot of sense to use gravity and bring water down here.
So Keyline Design is a whole systems approach to water and land management. When you're looking at a landscape, at the undulations, you pick up certain clues. You might say, okay, here's my key point. That's where my water is going to collect, and I'm going to move it maybe slightly up over to this ridge from source all the way to your sink, which here is the Pacific Ocean. So you'll see these areas below the ponds that have increased forage production right here at this transition is where that water collects. So you see the grass is greener right here in the key point. There's more vegetation, and then it travels from the key point through this channel. And if we look closely at the water that's running in this channel, it's running very slow.
This aquifer in the Pajaro Valley has been in overdraft since around the 1950s.
So what we have outlined right here is the network that we have up and running. As of sort of the last 2 weeks, we've purchased all of the towers and they are being installed as we speak, so the network is functioning. Just think of what's going to be wired. It's kind of this outer ring of all of these.
Precision is critical, and that's what this soil tension measurement provides. On average, our growers are saving 30% of their water use. That will in turn mean a 30% reduction in the overdraft situation.
Some of the permaculture teachers that we've had, Darren Doherty being one of them from Australia. We've come a long way from really having a closed loop system. Our business is a lot about relationships. That's important, is just having that conscious knowledge of all of the embodied energy that goes into your food. That's a big part of my dream, is to be able to source all of our resources right here locally. If we really focus on the local economy, I think we can realistically accomplish that goal.
It's a true win-win for the environment and the farmers, and so we're excited to see where the future goes, and that's what's exciting about the work that we're doing, and Frank and the growers utilizing these types of systems.
In order to feed everyone on this planet and do no harm to ourselves or the environment, we need to start thinking about better use of resources. New practices in organic farming, water conservation, and natural solutions are leading the way, hopefully before it's too late.
If what we're doing is unsustainable, that means we can't keep doing it over the long term. Societies, we know looking back through history, civilizations rise and fall. When societies act unsustainably, they collapse. And that's the direction we're going right now.